This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good. So we have started since Pesach. Hello, Steve. You don't have your better half with you?
She's gonna.
Let me keep one of you. There are a few extras lying around, right by David over there. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so starting with Passover, actually starting with the day after Passover, we started the mitzvah, the commandment of Sfirat HaOmer, of counting the Omer. So it has been said that the greatest, the most precious gift that God gives to anyone is the gift of time, is life and is time. And it can't be bought, and it's always passing. Okay? The value of time is infinite, depending on how we choose to or not to utilize it. But what can be gained in a moment is infinite. We have the halachot, the Jewish laws, that we don't desecrate the Shabbat, the Sabbath, but to save a life, there the overarching obligation is to save the life, and that overrules any Shabbat prohibition. Let's say we can save someone's life to add, right? We can't save their life, but we would add on an hour, add on 10 minutes, add on 1 minute, add on half a minute, add on a few seconds. Let's say doing something, desecrating the Shabbat, would add on what we call chaye sha'ah, a few moments of life. So there we say, absolutely, we would desecrate the Shabbat, the Sabbath, to save a few moments of a person's life because of the value of time, because of the few moments. Now, what could a person possibly accomplish within a few seconds?
Tell family they love them. Say Shema.
Okay, say Shema, tell family they love them. Let's say they can't speak. They can't speak. Right? They're literally on their deathbed. Literally, their soul is slipping away. They're not able to communicate. They're not able to do anything. They're not able to move. What is the infinite value of those few seconds? Dove, what do you want to say?
I say they're gonna ask for total forgiveness and want to move on.
Okay. So first of all, right, when we see a person who is still alive but in a comatose state, so according to modern medicine, right, well, the truth is medicine has no idea what is really going on. There have been many cases, some of them have been forwarded to me in different emails, of people who were considered to be brain dead, and then they came back around. So clearly, there are things that could be going on, right? And that's on a purely physical, medical level. But on a more spiritual level, we understand that at that point, the person is wavering between life and death, meaning that the soul is in and out, in and out, in and out. And therefore, I always tell people, be careful what you say in front of the person, right? Because medically, we don't know what they do or don't hear, but spiritually, they're fully aware of all that which is going on all around them. But as long as a person is alive, our thoughts matter, not just our actions, not just our words, but even our thoughts make a difference. And who knows what thoughts a person can have, perhaps regret over certain things, right? Who knows what the effects of a person's thoughts could be? And therefore, we do anything and everything to save even what we call chaye sha'ah, even very, very temporary life for a person. Now, this mitzvah of ours begins at the time of Pesach, right? We'll see probably next week why, specifically on the second day of Pesach. But Pesach, Passover, is the time when we went from slavery to freedom. A slave, his time or her time is not their own. They are at the behest of their overlords in terms of what they can do. And we were working day and night over there. Then came the Exodus, Yitziat Mitzrayim. And in a moment, we were free. And now our time is our own. And therefore, at that point, we are giving this commandment to count the days until the holiday of Shavuot, which is when we stood by Mount Sinai and heard God speak and received the Torah. Now, often people make a mistake. Right? It's not that Moses came down, on Mount Sinai, all of a sudden they, walked down carrying a Torah, right? But we received the Ten Commandments, which included in them the entire Torah in a certain cryptic manner. But we accepted the Torah, and the Torah then was written according to some opinions. Moshe came down and wrote the Torah as we have it today up until that point in history, up until the point of Mount Sinai. He certainly did not write the entire Torah at that point. Had he done that, then Korach would not have rebelled, knowing the results. Moshe would have spoken to instead of hitting the rock, knowing the results. But the Torah was written by Moshe, dictated by God to Moshe, and written until that point. And the remainder of the Torah, there are two opinions in the Talmud. Either that it was written prakim, as the events took place, God dictated to Moshe and he wrote those segments of the Torah, or at the very end of Moses' life, at the end of the 40 days in the desert, that's when he wrote it all. But we are counting the days until Matan Torah, until Mount Sinai, until the giving of the Torah. And when we count something, then we realize the value, the individualized value of each of those that we are counting. So therefore, if a day goes by without it having been a meaningful day, then that has been squandered. And we might try to do double the next day, but the opportunities and the value, the preciousness of that one day has slipped away. And that will never, never come back. So we count the days of the Omer. And when we see the numbers climbing higher and higher, right? Today is the 11th day of the Omer. Then we need to have this realization that time is passing. The hours are ticking, and we must make an accounting of who I am, what I've been doing, where I'm going, and this full accounting of ourself. So the mitzvah of counting the Omer reminds us that each and every day, another day of our life has passed. And we have to take hold of each of those days and fill it with meaning. An explanation that I always like to share is that the very first of the prayers, the first words that a Jew is meant to say in the morning is Moda ani lefanecha, thanks I give before you, God. We don't say I thank, we say thanks I give. Our first word should not be I. Our first word should be thanks. So it's not ani modeh, I thank. It's modeh, ani, thanks. I give before you. Shechazarta, that you've returned to me, my soul, you returned my soul to me with your compassion. Rabba emunatecha, the last two words mean great is your faith. So some explain it to mean great is emunatecha, your faith, meaning great is the faith we have in you. But I prefer the explanation, Rabba emunatecha, great is your faith, God. God's faith in what? God's faith in me. If he's given me another day, it means that God has faith in me that I can make this meaningful, that he has a purpose, a reason, a mission for me on this day. And that's why I woke up. And the Sfirat HaOmer is meant to remind us of the importance of every day as we count from the time of Passover when we were no longer slaves and our days, our time became our own. Along with that comes a major responsibility. If the time is your own, then it's your responsibility to use it to its fullest. And that is what we start doing as from Pesach, as we mark our way towards the glorious holiday of Shavuot. That's not what I want to discuss today. Yes, Steve.
This reminds me of the fact that the first mitzvah is Achoresh Hazel Lachem, which is like
very nice.
Right when you're not an Evid anymore, you set your calendar. You have control.
Correct. Steve is pointing out very correctly. Grace, you should be proud. Steve is pointing out very correctly that the very first of the commandments that was given to the Jewish people as a whole was HaChodesh Hazel Lachem, was the proclamation of this Rosh Chodesh, of determining the Hebrew months, the lunar months, and the Beit Din would determine when it would begin, right? And HaChodesh Hazel Lachem, time is now yours, and therefore make it worth it, make it meaningful, make it meaningful. I remember I was actually it was such a beautiful way of expressing it. I was giving the invocation at I don't know where it was. It wasn't the Irvine City Council. It was I don't know one of the school one of the school boards, whatever it was, and they were honoring there one of the Jewish components, and that's why I was asked to give the invocation there. And they were also honoring a whole group of veterans, of U.S. veterans. So afterwards, I went over to one of the veterans who had a really amazing story, and I thanked him for his service. And his response to me was, and it wasn't just to me, that's how he would respond to everyone who said, thank you for your service. He said, you were worth it, which is a very, very powerful statement, right? It's a very powerful statement. It really hit me. And again, I had no delusions to think he said that to me and not to everyone who thanked him for his service. That's a very powerful statement, meaning I made incredible sacrifices, right? But you were worth it. But I didn't take that as a pat on the back. I took that as marching orders. That let's make sure that in fact I was worth it. I and all the others who gained from this this amazing, he's a man in his 90s at the time, but he was a teenager when he was in the army, 18, 19. That we make it worth it. So like I said, that is the Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer as we work our way towards Shavuot. But like I said, that's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about is, and we always forget, it's Sfirat HaOmer, right? We would think it's the counting of, Sfira means counting, it's the counting of the days, it's the counting of the weeks, it's the counting to Sinai, it's the counting to Torah. No, it is the counting of the Omer. What is this Omer? So the Omer was a special offering, sacrificial offering that was brought in the temple. And before any of the newly grown grains, be they wheat, barley, oats, rye, and spelt. Those are the 5 grains which can be turned into bread or into chametz, as we all went through. Rice cannot, hence the Sephardim eat rice on Passover. Ashkenazic custom is not to. But any of these newly grown grains of that year, before they can be eaten, the equivalent of 1 day's worth of barley flour, right? What one person would eat of barley flour, obviously made into something, right? Of 1 day, that is brought into the Beit HaMikdash, that was brought in the temple in Jerusalem. This offering of barley is known as the Omer offering. Why do we bring barley and not wheat or any of the other grains? Barley is the first to ripen, to be ready. And therefore we bring that. And today, where the temple has been in a destroyed state since the year 70, when the Romans destroyed the temple, but that is where we go to pray. We go into Jerusalem, to the Kotel, to the outer walls, one of the outer walls of that temple area. So now, without a temple standing, new grains are permitted after the end of that 2nd day of Passover, and that's derived from different psukim, different verses. So let's see source number 1, and that is the Torah commandment of the Omer. Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 23, verses 9 to 11. By the Ber Hashem, El Moshe Lemor, God spoke to Moses saying, Daber el b'nei Yisroel, speak to the children of Israel. The Amarta alehem, and you shall say to them, Ki tavo el haaretz, when you will come to the land, Asher ani notein lachem, that I am giving to you. Ukitzartem et kitzira, you will reap the harvest. Ve'hevetim et Omer, you shall bring the Omer. Reishit kitzirchem, the very first of your harvest, you shall bring it El HaKohen, to the Kohen. The Kohen is the tribe or part of the tribe of Levi that would do the service in the temple. They are serving as our spiritual proxies, spiritual representatives. Not that they do things, well, everyone is responsible for themselves, but there's certain things that could only be done by the Kohanim. And vehinif et haomer, he shall wave the Omer lifnei Hashem, before God, lirtzonchem, to be an appeasement for you. When? Mimacharat haShabbat yinifenu haKohen, on the day following the Sabbath, that's a reference to the first day of Pesach, that is when the Kohen shall wave it.
So this commandment can only be done in the land then?
It's only done in the land, only done in the temple.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all the 40 years, they never did this,
Correct.
even though there was
Correct.
a Mishnah.
Correct. Ki tavo el haaretz, it says, when you come to the land, that's when this mitzvah, when we entered the land after 40 years in the desert, that's when this mitzvah kicked in.
And there wouldn't have been produce in the midbar, it just would be mom.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Excellent point. They weren't growing things in the midbar. They were eating in the desert. They were eating the manna from heaven, and we'll come to that in a little bit.
Rabbi,
Yes.
also, what I find important here is God is saying to Moses, when you come to the land that I am giving you,
Yeah.
it's not that you're taking it, but I am giving it to you. And it's not the nations of the world that are giving it to us.
Correct.
It's God has given us this.
Correct. And throughout the Torah, those are the terms that are used repeatedly, David. Yeah. Asher ani notein lachem, that I'm giving to you.
These psukim to Hamas.
Yeah. Okay. So everything that was done in the temple is filled with different levels of significance. What can we learn out, derive from this Omer offering? So source number 2 is the Chizkuni, one of the great commentators on the Torah, on the Bible. And he says as follows, Ein derech eretz shetochlu min hachadash ad shetaviu mimenu doron la'kadosh baruch hu. It would not be appropriate to eat, respectful, to eat from the new harvest without bringing a portion of it as a gift of thanks to God. Now, does God need our gifts? No. So why are we bringing a gift to God?
Because the whole harvest is what God is.
Because we need to recognize that the gift, this gift, and any gifts that we have are coming from God, as we see in number 3, right? And this is a fundamental concept that we have, that whenever we have everything that we have, we view as a gift from God. We've mentioned many times. I mean, something that grows from the ground. It's astounding. You're taking a seed, which is this biological superstar, because packed in this one single seed is all the information and the capacity for a sequoia, for a redwood, for a watermelon, for a grape, for an orange, for wheat, barley. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Right? If someone were to land on this planet and see us taking these seeds, putting in the ground and seeing what grows out from there, they would be in shock. This is absolutely incredible. We always think that the manna falling from heaven, oh, that's miraculous. But as I've often said, imagine a person, right, as Steve mentioned, they weren't planting in the midbar, in the desert. The manna was falling. Imagine a person born a few months after we left Egypt, right? So for 39 years, what's he eating? The manna from heaven. Now he's almost 40 years old, goes into the land of Israel, and all of a sudden seeds are going into the ground, things are growing. What does he say? It's a miracle. It's a miracle. We look at that and say, ho hum, ho hum. This orange isn't so sweet. That's what we have to say. It's not, we have complaints. It's an absolute miracle. Right? He saw the manna falling from heaven and he said, ho hum. We see things growing from the ground. We say, ho hum. It falls from the heavens. We say it's a miracle. As I've often said, nature is nothing but a miracle that we've gotten jaded with. That's what nature is. It's absolutely incredible. And therefore, we have to recognize that as we're doing our harvest, we recognize that everything that we have is a gift. All of our prosperity is a gift from God. And we've been working the fields. But when something grows, what is it? It's a gift. It's a gift from God. They tell a joke that a person challenged God to a duel. Said, God, whatever you can do, I can do. So God says, yeah, all right, let me show you. Right? I'm going to make man. And God gathers together some of the earth and breathes into it his spirit, and a person comes to life. The person says, no big deal. And he starts to gather some earth together. God says, make your own earth. Make your own earth. Right? Right? That's the recognition that everything that we have. Now, where else? This is in Leviticus. This is in Vayikra. Where else have we had this measurement of an Omer? The man. We were told when the man would fall, you should gather. When the manna fell from heaven, we were told to collect Omer, this measurement of a daily's sustenance, la galgolet, for each person, one Omer. And let me ask you, so what is the Omer man connection?
Apparently, that's supposedly for most people sufficient for their eating needs.
Okay, sufficiently Omer for their needs, good. But what might also be an Omer man connection? And I think it's a story that I just told you about the 39-year-old, right? Recognize that this is another form of manna, whether it's coming from the heavens or coming from the earth, coming out of the dirt.
Ah,
It's all the same.
the barley harvest.
It's all the same gift from Hashem. And before we can partake of this incredible blessing of a whole new season of grains growing from the ground, we have to take the very first grain that ripens, the barley, and bring an offering to Hashem to show that we recognize that this is a gift. Look at number 3, the Sifsei Chaim. Kedei she'adam chas v'shon lo yargish kochi va'otzem yadi. A person should not think, heaven forbid, my might and the strength of my hands. Shelo yachshov, don't think, charashti, I plowed, zarati, I planted, vata, and I spent the months working on this, vata ani kotzer, now I am harvesting. Hine kikain ani gidalti et hatvua. A person might think, hey, who grew this? Who is the producer of this grain? Who made this grain? I did.
You might have grown
I'm
it.
the one who plowed, I planted, I tended to it. I'm the one who did it. Lest a person think that, lachein haTorah melamedet oto. Therefore, the Torah, by giving us this commandment, is teaching us lohu bekocho. With all that you did and all the strength and all the efforts and all the work that you put in, that's not going to create this harvest. Let's see you make your own earth. Let's see you make your own seed. How are you going to do that? Kima Kodesh Baruch Hu, rather, it is the Holy One, blessed is He, it is God. Notein lanu et aparnasah. He is the one who gives the sustenance. Umimenu ba hakol. And everything comes from Him. V'heyachi halimud. How is this lesson taught to us? Ayideshin notanim hareshit laHashem. We give the very first, most precious part, hachelek hachaviv biyoter, that which is most dear to us, bikurei hatavua. The very first grain is something that is very, very dear to us. You go into many stores and you'll see a dollar bill hung up in that store. What is that dollar bill? The very first dollar that they earned when they began their business. The very first thing has a tremendous amount of, it's very dear to us. It's very, very precious to us. So therefore we give that chelik, that part, hachaviv biyoter, that is most precious, bikurei atvua, the first of the grains, b'kach modim, by doing that we admit, we show, shahakol hu me'et Hashem, that everything is from God. Kasher mekashrim et hareshit, bahaprat hareshit umochiach alakol. When we connect the first portion, then it's clear, bahaprat, that first portion comes, umochiach alakol, and reflects on everything that will follow. Right? So not just the first barley, all that will follow. Not just barley, the first of the crops to ripen, but all of the produce that will ripen afterwards. V'hakol mitkadesh. And everything becomes holy. Everything becomes sanctified. Once I'm able to infuse this spirituality, this recognition, this appreciation to God into it, it then becomes kadosh. It then becomes sanctified. Now, we have, what are some of the other firsts that we have, that we are commanded to give to Hashem?
Bikurim.
Bikurim, okay, this is the first grains. Bikurim, another mitzvah of firsts, the first fruits. As the first ones that start to blossom, we tie something around it, because once the tree is filled with the fruits, you won't be able to determine which is which. You tie something around it, And that then, once it's ripened, that is brought to the Beit HaMikdash, to the temple again, and laid down over there by the temple, presented to the Kohanim. They get to eat it as the spiritual representatives, but we're giving the first fruits to God. Good, Bikurim. What else? First boy, right? Right? First boy, we have a Pidyon Ben, we have a redemption of that, the status of a Bechor, of that firstborn. What else? Teruma. When we're then growing things in our field, we take off 2% and it goes to the Kohanim, right? Before we can partake of any of the produce, imagine this. You have 100% of your field, or so you thought. 2% of that goes to the Kohanim. That's called Truma. Only they can eat it. You're down to 98%. 10% of that, 9.8, let's round it off. Let's say 88. You're left with 88% at this point. That 10%, that goes to the Levites. Both the Kohanim and the Leviim, when the land of Israel was distributed amongst the tribes, they did not receive a portion because they needed to be spread out amongst, and every tribe would give a number of cities, 4 cities, that would be Levite cities where they could live. And that way they were all spread out amongst us, and their influence was pervasive, was amongst us. They don't have the land to grow their own produce. 2% go to the Kohanim. 10% goes to the Levites. Then you take another 10%. We're down to about 78 point something percent left for you. What does the next 10% do? It depends. If it's years 1, 2, 4, 5 of the Shemitah cycle, they are brought to Jerusalem and eaten there and distributed to people in need over there. Years 3 and 6 of the sabbatical cycle, that is given out to the poor. On the 7th year, none of it is yours. It's all fair game for anyone. That's the Shemitah sabbatical year, making us realize over and over and over that which we have is not truly ours. It's given to us by God as hopefully trusted proprietors of this. That's what we're supposed to do with it. We have to realize, but it's always the things that are first that is so special. I always say, after my first son, of course, I was so excited, and then I had second son, third son, fourth son, fifth son, right? So having a first daughter after 5 boys was like having that first child again. The first is always very, very, very dear and very special to us. I tell the story when we first moved to Israel. We were newlyweds, and we moved into an apartment. And apartments in Israel then, maybe it's probably still now, don't come with built-in closets. A room has 4 walls. And where do you put your clothing? Figure it out. Right? Either you buy in our own, you buy a nice closet, or you do something. So we had these beds from the yeshiva that I was going to be teaching at. So we took the mattresses on and put them on the floor, and we stood up the beds with the metal springs, and we used that to hang up clothing. And then our lift came, which is all of our belongings, and now we really needed a place to put stuff. So I was not very handy. My father, of blessed memory, was a professor and didn't do all that much handiwork. Basically, if 3-in-1 oil or duct tape would not do the trick, then you need to call a handyman. That was how I grew up, right? But I quickly learned how to. Really, Natalie taught me how to become handy. One of the trisim, which is it allows the shades to come down, but it's in a box. So one of them wasn't working. So I said, let's call a handyman. She looked at me and said, are you crazy? I said, let's open up the box. Let's see what the problem is. Right? Her father was a silversmith, so he was used to working with his hands. So we go there, open the box, and there's a simple wheel there, and the cord had fallen off the wheel. So we put it back on the wheel, and it worked. For me, that was a eureka moment, an epiphany. Wow, you don't have to call a handyman. So the lift comes, which is a big wooden box, and I think I sent a handsaw, and I literally handsaw, and I cut up that wood, and I built a very, very rudimentary cabinet, right, in the kitchen for pots and pans, and in the bedroom to hang some clothing and some shelves, basically top, sides, bottom, back shelves. Very, very, very rudimentary. But the next morning, after I built it, I went running into the kitchen just to see that it was still standing. And I was so proud. I was so, so proud. This was the first thing of, not model airplanes as a kid, but the first thing that I actually had built like that, right? The reshit. The first thing that we do is very, very, very dear to us. So the Omer is the reshit. We're bringing the first of the harvest of the barley, which is the first of all the harvest, and we recognize, thank you, God, for what I have. With all the work that I've done, thank you, God, for this gift. Yes, Leah.
Just a quick question. Is there a specific measurement for the Omer?
Yes.
How much is it?
Yes, it's about 30 ounces. It's a certain measurement. It's enough that is utilized by a person typically within one day. That'll be one person's food for the day of this barley, obviously mixed with other things. But that would be, and that's what they ate. That's what the Omer was. I'm sorry, that's what the man was. The man was a day's worth of food. Okay.
So it wasn't sacrificed like on the altar?
It was not sacrificed on the altar. It was, along with the Kohanim, it will be waved. And next week we'll see the idea of the waving of that. And then it's given to the Kohanim, right? And then, the Omer offering, I'm sorry, that would be a meal offering that would go up onto the altar. Yeah, right? And that would go up onto the altar. Yes, that was a korban mincha. We've been having that in the morning, Steve. That's a korban mincha that would going up, a meal offering that would go up onto the altar. Yeah.
What does it mean that the rest of the food is going to be, it sounds like it's going to be hektish or something, maktish? But that would mean almost like you can't eat it. Like I'm not sure what's even.
So when we say kodesh, we don't mean it's sanctified, that it's now, that it can't be eaten, but it has become elevated. And when a person eats from that, they too become elevated as a result of that. Not kadosh in that it's separated and that only certain individuals can eat it, but it has a, everything is meant to accomplish. Everything is meant to become elevated spiritually, right? The food, when we make a blessing before we eat it, that elevates it spiritually, and then it gives us a spiritual nourishment when we eat it, in addition to the biological, physical nourishment that it provides. So this has reached its what it's meant to be. Yeah.
Different context.
Correct.
If it's hektish, you have to actually kind of redeem it.
Correct.
Non-holy.
Correct. That's not the case here. Now, Rav Hirsch, as always, he delves into, this is source number 4, he delves into the idea of, well, what was this comprised of? And what do each of the ingredients teach us? And how does that fit into the explanation we've been giving of giving full thanks to God? So, source number 4, Rav Shimshon Hirsch on Vayikra 23:10. Rav Hirsch, of course, was the leader of Orthodox Judaism in Germany. Germany is where the Reform movement began, and there were many who were pulling people away from Torah observance. And Rav Hirsch stood at the forefront of maintaining orthodoxy. And I would just say maintaining orthodoxy. That was Judaism, but not letting Judaism become only this reform movement, but maintaining the teachings and the practices of Judaism as it had been practiced for generations, going back to Shavuot, going back to the time of Mount Sinai, and he would show the depth and the beauty in that which often at first glance might seem to be mundane. And he writes as follows in number 4. When you have attained not only freedom, but also national independence, which the possession of one's own land gives, and like we said before, along with that comes responsibility. Personal freedom, personal responsibility. National freedom, national responsibility. And you cut the produce of the land, bring that which the land has produced into your own personal possession, then bring the first Omer that you cut, i.e., the amount that corresponds to one day's food, and you bring that to the Kohen, to the priest, to your representative in God's sanctuary. This cutting corresponds to the real harvest of the land, all of the grains, wheat, barley, oats, rye, spelt. This Omer is brought from the barley, which is the earliest grain to ripen, as we said. And to the Omer, the law of waving is added, consisting of horizontal movements in all 4 directions, followed by moving upwards and downwards, as we do with our lulav and etrog set on the holiday of Sukkot, that it is waved in those 4 directions and up and down. By the procedure of waving, one's material nourishment, right? This is made up of, the Omer is made up of flour, barley flour, and oil and incense. And he says those 3 represent these 3 basic components of our life, right? We have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Is hierarchy of needs, is that what it's called? Yeah. So we have one's material nourishment, that is flour. We have one's well-being, that is oil. And we have one's mental satisfaction with life, incense. Flour is material basic nourishment. Add a little bit of oil and you're living kind of large, right? Now you're living. And then going beyond the physical, we have the incense, right? Which is what gives a person this heightened sense of enjoyment, of spirituality. So those are the components here. Flour, material nourishment. Oil, one's well-being, as he calls it. And incense, one's mental satisfaction with life, which are all represented in the Omer. And each and every one of these are stripped of every idea of selfishness, meaning I wave it in every direction, up and down, recognizing it's not from me. I'm not the one who created this. I might have worked hard, but the blessing, the bounty, that was a gift from God. Represented by giving the Omer offering to the Kohen, who does the waving. Then, this symbol of our earthly existence, we're showing our earthly existence with all its prosperity and joy of life, is placed in the temple to acknowledge that only through the Torah's ruling influence can we find our dedication to the community and to God. That the Torah, as we often say, is called Torat Chaim, translated often as living, a living Torah, but Chaim means life, and Torat Chaim means instructions for life. It is the God manual for life, and letting us know that through that we have our dedication to community, our dedication to God, and we have the ability to elevate, to sanctify, and to elevate even the most mundane things. They become holy, right? Judaism, right? All holidays we eat, right? The idea being that Judaism is not about stepping back and not being involved in the world. It's being involved in the world and sanctifying it. Marriage is sanctified. Eating can be sanctified. When we're doing it in the proper way, right, with the proper parameters, then those things become sanctified, become holy, and we utilize this world as a vehicle towards holiness.
I'm a little confused because when we do say etrog and the four species waving, we just do it. Here it's specified horizontal, like we have to wave it like this.
No. We waved the four horizontal directions. We wave forward.
Oh, okay. I thought the actual motion.
No, we're waving to those four directions.
Okay.
Right? Four directions and then up and down.
So it's
recognizing
those four directions are in a horizontal plane.
Correct. That everything that comes to us is this blessing. So that is the Omer that we are counting from. Now, like I said before, we're really starting with the counting towards Shavuot, right? And we have this mitzvah, this very important mitzvah as we learn now, on the second day. Why are we connecting the counting to Shavuot with this mitzvah of the Omer? So that we will work on next week, my friends.
It's on the same command, though, that you shall count from the day of the
right. But we could have said count from the second day of
But that's
Pesach.
not what Hashem said.
Exactly. So the question is our understanding of why. Exactly. That's what we'll need to work on next week. Okay, my friends. Once again, a thank you to Linda for sponsoring. Right, sponsoring, I believe, in honor of your friend Lauren that you brought. Okay, so thank you very much. And also, today is Yom HaShoah. Today is the Holocaust Remembrance Day. Those who joined us, we had a meaningful, I think it was a meaningful, I didn't stay for the other two call-ins and for Council Member Treseder's response to the first one. Were you there for that?
No, unfortunately not. And I think somebody recorded it.
Yeah.
Last night?
This was at City Council Tuesday night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had a commemoration of Holocaust. We had a number of survivors who were there, and some who spoke, and different community members spoke. It was very nice. Tonight at Shir Hamalot, there's going to be a panel of Israel, Zionism, Judaism today. I'll be on that panel. That's at 7:00 tonight. If anybody is interested in coming, you do need to sign up and make sure to bring your ID, because it's going to be ID will be checked on the way in. Yes, Dov. On the emails that were sent out, it's an email sign up.
Okay, the quick question is, isn't it interesting that here we're commanded to bring an offering,